Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Mikhail Peters. I'm doing this covert mission right now where I'm trying to make it look like I'm talking on the computer even though I'm actually not, so that's why I have headphones in. I feel like this is really weird recording a video in the airport, but I felt like I had a lot of things that I was thinking about. Also, I think the background noise canceling with this is actually not so bad, so we're gonna go ahead and try this. I still did not find my wallet. I had people asking me about that. I retraced my steps to absolutely every single place that I went in the 24 hours before I lost it, and no place had it. And the only thing I could have thought about was that it literally got taken out of my backpack while I was eating. So it's like I have my regular wallet, which like if I lost that one I would have been screwed, but this one it had like 2 cards in it, and I keep checking and there's still no transactions on the credit card, which I guess whoever stole it was looking for cash, but there was no money in there. I think there were just a couple of receipts, so I'm kind of confused. And then my friend's like, yeah, maybe they thought that there was money in it. You know, I don't know. It could be that I switched coats and this coat doesn't have good pockets. I kind of keep making that mistake. So it could be that it actually fell out, but it may be the case also that that didn't happen. So in any event, I reported it as stolen just because I have a suspicion that it could have been taken out of my backpack. I don't want to think that, but it's possible. And I had gone to Migri yesterday, and actually, like, I told her I had 2 residence permits cards, and she's like, oh, these are really hot on the black market, so as long as you promise not to give it to somebody. And I'm like, yeah, no. I was like, it's not like a fake ID and like you got under 21, you can't drink here. Like, that's the issue in the US. But yeah, so that was why I went ahead and like reported it as stolen, and it was like it probably got stolen at the library, like specifically during these hours on Thursday. And there's cameras in there. I mean, I wouldn't really expect them to do a whole investigation on this. I'm not really sure. And this time I actually plan to give myself extra time at the airport to eat at Pretty Boy Winery. So I'm going to show these because they're beautiful. And this is the Pretty Boy sauce, which is like a buffalo sauce. They're a little bit pricey. They're like $15, but I think I had been planning to eat them for like a long time before I came here. So there's that. I always like to come to the airport early to eat here. Not always, but sometimes. It depends. Well, if it's open. Like, my flight is not at 6 a.m., so there's that. Okay. So anyway, nonetheless, I had a pretty good day yesterday. I went to the police station to file a report, and then that guy started talking to me about the U.S., and he's like, people don't even know where Finland is. And I was like, yeah, I had a Finnish friend who came to the U.S. and started asking people that, and they like pretended they would know, but they really didn't. It was kind of hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, like, it's just we only really know about ourselves. Like, we don't really learn anything in school. Like, all the knowledge that I know is just from my own travels and moving around. And he's like, well, it kind of makes sense because the country's so big. And I was like, yeah, kind of. I don't know. I think it's still kind of dumb. I didn't say that. I was just like, okay. Anyway, then I went to Migri and I asked her a bunch of questions too. And that's how I found out about the residence permit thing. And yeah, I mean, that's why I went to the city center. I had a Migri appointment, and then I was like, I'll just go to the police while I have this issue with the missing wallet. Anyway, but whatever. There are so many other things I could have gone missing that would have made my life a lot more difficult, so I'm trying to let it go. Even though I've lost 2 hats and 1 glove this year, that pales in comparison to losing a wallet. So I did go ahead and just order a new driver's license because I'm not trying to wait around and see if it ever shows up. And if it doesn't, I'll have 2 driver's licenses. That's kind of useless, to be honest, but whatever. Okay, so I was watching another YouTube video, and I kind of want to piggyback off of that because I do feel like running a YouTube channel is getting to a point where it's feeling sort of like this moral quandary. Okay, I might eat my wings now and then return to this thought. So I moved seats slightly because I'm trying to get away from people, but a bunch of people showed up, so that's not very helpful. So I don't know what's up with this particular location, but they've been out of the mac and cheese for a while, and it's making me really upset. Okay, so I guess yeah, I was going to reference this YouTube video that I had read, which was about I had read a YouTube video, I watched a YouTube video that was talking about living somebody else's dream, and I talked about this already, and I should link it below, but sometimes it's kind of hard to identify what your dream is, and like, I was talking to my aunt about this yesterday, and we were just talking about how your brain's really powerful and you can basically like manifest things, right? Like, I think a lot of people believe that, and it's funny because we had to make a vision board in high school, and mine consisted of having like a bunch of pictures of different countries and different languages, and to some extent this has actually come true in my life. So I guess that was subconsciously, a thing I've always wanted from like a young age, and that was, I think, before I even started traveling internationally, but like I was always interested in other cultures and languages. So there's that. I'm feeling like so paranoid because there's so many people around. It's awkward. So I think I'm just going to do like this, where it doesn't look like I'm staring at myself because it's awkward. Okay. But anyway, this living somebody else's dream thing, like, yeah, I started thinking about like, what is my dream? Like, what do I want? And I think one of the things is like, part of it is this feeling of like feeling like you're too much for other people. Like sometimes I feel like I'll call family members and they get really annoyed and they're like, oh, don't you have work to be doing? I'm like, yes, I do. Like, I really do. Okay, so that's one thing. But I think that's the thing that I like a lot about the format of YouTube is that like I can talk and have a conversation and people can either tune in or tune out of it. Like, that's totally your choice. So I think also, because I was talking to another friend about this, it's like I don't have a particularly strong desire to be emotionally close with very many people, and I feel like in the rare instances where I have let somebody in really closely, it ended very badly and just like didn't end up in a sustainable relationship. So I think that's part of why this format is becoming attractive. I think there's a level of like, if I'm going to be very forthcoming, getting some sort of like attention and validation from this, which like is a sad reality that like women are attention seeking, and it's like, oh, well, that was a really sexist statement, but not necessarily, because there was a time when I was trying to explain this something. I was like, men are after one thing, let's say, women are after another, and women just want attention, right? So like women are willing to, let's say, at times put out, if you will, because of the attention exchange. So it's sort of like competing interests that also kind of go together in a way. I think that's, was my assessment of that. And I was like, it's literally in Genesis in the Bible if you want to check it out. To remember where, maybe I'll put that below too. It's like a thing, and I think it's true. Okay, so there's that. But anyway, in this video, it was also talking about this thing called parasocial behavior, and it's sort of where like people who are watching the channel will think that they're in a relationship, like, or friendship or whatever with the person they're watching. And so this is sort of the moral quandary that I'm starting to feel, because I understand I have a lot of fans and stuff. And one of the things that this particular guy was saying is like, I'm kind of famous a little bit on YouTube, and it's like people want to talk to me, and it's like there aren't enough hours in the day for me to talk to everybody. And it's kind of true, because that's how I feel, where it's like I have so many things I'm doing at once right now, like I don't even want to get into listing them. And then it's like people, I already have like my regular, like actual personal life on top of this, and then there's like the social YouTube life of this. So that's why, I really encourage the dialogue of like, if you have very specific questions you want me to answer in a video, like that's cool. But I think kind of sustaining a dialogue with people who I meet from the channel can be kind of hard, because it was like what he was explaining is it's like, people know me because I'm the one talking, but it's like I don't know you. And it's like sometimes like I think the thing that's weird is if I have met people from the channel, they're very like, they just want me to keep talking, and I'm like, well, maybe I want to get to know you. But then at the same time, I think that there are a lot of like assumptions that people make about who I really am, when like I don't really feel that that's my case, that's the case, because I'm a very like polished version of who I am when I'm on the channel. So maybe it, like, as authentic as I try to be and as relatable as people think I am, it's like that doesn't really seem to like play out when I'm trying to have like, actual like friendships and relationships with people. So I don't know, like I'm just starting to feel kind of like weird about it, because I feel like in a very weird way I'm capitalizing on, how lonely people feel today. And it's like I've said this many times, but it's like I really want to encourage people who are watching to like go out and like have those relationships in real life, like where you're filling that void, yes, that too, but filling that void of loneliness, because it's not necessarily maybe like going to come from the channel. And that's very counterintuitive, where I'm like, stop watching my channel. It's not necessarily like I'm saying that, but it's sort of like maybe like there's this idea that I'm like a more accessible celebrity or something. I'm not even sure. It's like that'd be like if I was trying to get in touch with, like, I don't know, a very well-known celebrity and being like, oh, I love you and I want to marry you. And it's like, I'm probably not going to respond to that. So it's sort of like, I think the thing is, it's like, I don't know people, right? And you may think you know me, you really don't. Just if I watch an actor act on TV, or if I listen to an interview of a famous business person, like, I don't know that person just from listening to that. And I guess that's kind of how I'm starting to feel about the channel. And to some extent, I worry about the antisocial behavior that this encourages in people, because, like, this is a dialogue that I'm having, and, like, yes, you're listening to it, and yes, you are engaging by commenting or by trying to reach out to me, but, like, it is not the same as, like, a conversation. And in some ways, you know, for me, why I'm doing this, I was thinking about, I was like, you know, I make like $5 a day. It's not a lot, but it's enough for, like, a cappuccino. Yeah. But I also understand the feeling that, like, people have of, like, oh, people are too much. Like, because I felt that way about other people. Other people have the right to feel that way about me. And it's like a personality mismatch, or it's just, you know, it's an incompatibility, whatever you want to call it. Like, I was reading yesterday about, like, not getting along with family, and some of it, like, can be a power dynamics thing. Some of it can also just be, like, a straight up, like, your personalities are clashing. So, yeah. I'm not really even sure what to add to this at this point, but yeah, it's just like I'm having a level of concern with it, because it really, like, draws on the moral and ethical principles surrounding, like, you know, is it okay to capitalize on people's loneliness? Now, I'm not the only thing that does this. I, like, honestly, like, let's just call out, like, the porn industry that's really doing that. I was actually having this discussion with my aunt yesterday. I'm like, you know, people are getting to a point where I think, and myself included, right, I just expressed this, where people are really afraid of, like, being in relationships or putting themselves out there, because people are afraid of rejection, and sometimes it feels safer to just go into your little hole and be entertained by your computer. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, this kind of calls for a balance, and however you feel like you need to get to that balance, it's like, it's your business. But I think it's just, like, for me, it can be a little bit exhausting is not the right word. Like, of course I want to foster engagement, but it may be distressing is more like the right word, because it's like I can't, like, this is going to sound so dumb, and it's not like I'd ever want this, but, like, I can't date every single person who watches my channel. I can't marry every single person who watches my channel. I can't go to every single country of every person who watches my channel who tells me to go there. So it's sort of like, it's a very superficial level, I guess, of engagement with another human, and I'm not responsible for other people's mental health, but, like, I do worry about the extent to which, like, continuing YouTube is impacting other people's mental health. Now, I don't know that means I'm going to stop doing it, but it might mean that if I get to a place where other things are yielding a profit, maybe I'm going to dial back on this. But at the same time, it's like I feel pretty vested. It's like the law of diminishing returns kind of thing. Like, I've already been vested in this venture for so long that it kind of feels unnatural to not continue it. But yeah, I mean, I am concerned about the parasocial behavior. I hadn't heard of it, and then I told one of my friends who's really into all the, what do you call, humanities about it, and she's like, oh yes, there's a really big issue with parasocial behavior and social media stars. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I looked into it a little bit, and then I heard this guy talk about it, and it was like, what he was saying was so relatable, and I really wanted to, like, engage back with that and comment or send him an email or something. But then I was just like, the hard thing, like, I kind of understand, it's like, you just get so much, like, people trying to message you, like, people trying to email you, and it's like, you don't even really, no, it's like, my belief is that a lot of these people do want to engage in some sort of relationship with me, whether it's friendship or something, but it's like, I can't do that for every single person who watches my channel, nor do I necessarily want to. And I feel like this is kind of, maybe, you know, you can call this an issue or not. It's like, I'm at a point in my life where, like, I'm pretty happy hanging out by myself, and it's kind of interesting. I feel like the only time I'm not, it's like, there's like this 10-minute walk back to my house after I spend the whole day working at the university, and, like, that's like the sad girl 10 minutes of my day. And I think it's because it's the time that I have to actually think about all my feelings. And, like, I think yesterday the whole situation was like, I had this, like, I started to miss these closer relationships that I had, you know, living in Finland for those 2 years, and now that I kind of bounce around all over the place so much, those opportunities aren't really accessible to me. And I think there's something very disingenuous about trying to foster those relationships over, like not in person. And I think the last closest relationship I had was like not in person, and then once it became in person, it self-destructed. So like I've got some skepticism around that as well. So like I always thought like, oh, long distance, you know, trying to form relationships that way is good, because then there's like a boundary like that's naturally enforced. But then like I remember like, you know, I'd lost a couple friends when I came back to the US for the summer, and one of my friends in the US said, so something in the dynamic, like the friendship dynamic changed, and that's why the friendships like discontinued themselves. And I was like, yeah, like that totally makes sense. So, you know, it was just like, part of it was that, but then part of it was like me really like pondering those relationships and thinking about whether they had served me or not, because in some ways I felt like they really hadn't. Like what I mean by that is, you know, I do feel like I was in these friendships where it's like people were trying to kind of control me, and I was kind of used to and comfortable with that, because I grew up in an environment where, like, quite frankly, I did feel very controlled. Like, just as an example, like, I wasn't allowed to pick out my own clothes until I was 13. Like, I still look back and think that's kind of weird. Like, so yeah, like, I just started thinking about, like, even though I missed those relationships, like, were they really healthy? I think that was, like, the thought I started having, and then, but it was still hard, like, it was really hard realization, and I kind of started crying, and, like, it's kind of the vibe, I think, that happens when I'm in La Pedronta, where I just, like, have all these moments of insight, and they're super painful, and then I start crying about it at some point, even though I feel like I'm keeping it together pretty well normally. And then I went home, and then, like, I think I talked about my sister got Snapchat. It's super exciting. It's like one of the best developments of my life. It's like sad, but it's true. And I was thinking about all this, and then as soon as I get home, she starts, like, she's getting in touch with me about, she's complaining to me about she's been having this issue with this friend from school for a long time. And I kind of said to her, like, what I said to myself on the way home, like, you know, it's not really okay to be friends with people who control you, because it was like, this friend didn't want her to be friends with another friend. It's like, that's not her decision. And I think I felt good in that moment, that painful moment I had a moment before was, like, actually useful, and I was able to help somebody else with it, right? So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at with, like, you know, these symbiotic relationships, as you will, where you're actually able to, like, you know, help another person through your experience, and I think that that's what is invaluable. Like, so yeah, maybe some of me sharing this stuff is helpful to people, and, you know, I do appreciate that aspect, but like I said, I also worry again about the morality of this, because how much of it is capitalizing on loneliness, and I don't even want to say boredom, I'd mostly just say loneliness. But yeah, so I don't know, I guess that's kind of it. Like, so I think there's a part of me also that gets super triggered by there being a lot of blanket statements, like, and this is not necessarily on the Finnish side, I feel like we're a little bit more on the same wavelength, if I'm being honest, but like on the Russian side, where people just think that the решение problem, like the deciding the problem, like resolving, that's the word I'm looking for, resolving the problem. This is an issue, actually. This happens to me sometimes when I'm typing in Russian and then the word comes to me in Russian and I have to, like, reverse Google Translate in English because I can't think of what it is. I did that this morning, and I do that a lot when I'm writing, and it happens to me a lot, but like then I just try to wait till the word comes to me, and sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, so and I get this because I used to feel this way, like let's say like the peak of your existence or something is the point at which, like, you get married and have kids, and it's a very, like, maybe old school traditional mentality, and I'm not saying I completely disagree with it, like, wholeheartedly, but it's just I've seen a lot of people become a lot unhappier after they get married, so I'm not really sure. It's like I kind of always felt like that was, like, the goal I was reaching for, and then maybe after watching a friend or two or three go through a divorce, I was like, yeah, no, that's not it. So I think it's more about just having relationships you enjoy, and that doesn't have to be a marriage, that can be a friendship, that can be, like, all different kinds of relationships with family, like, whatever. So, and I think it's like, you know, it's also like, oh, you think too much, and it's like, alright, if you think I think too much, you don't have to watch these, like, what do you want me to say to you? Okay, I think that's dumb. Some people like to engage with that, some people don't. That's, like, your choice whether you continue watching this or not. Like, nobody's forcing you. But, yeah, like, so, I think I'm a little bit desensitized maybe to it at this point because it's like, I remember my one friend said this to me and it like made a lot of sense. It's like when you're interacting with certain family members, you have to think of it as like a computer program that gives the same exact output every time you run the code. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's sort of like I make a video in Russian. I am of this certain demographic where people perceive me to be, and I'm going to specify that people perceive me, right, to be unmarried and childless at this age. It's a problem. I know that from living in Kyrgyzstan. I don't think Russia is too far off. But people perceive it as an issue, so then the response is going to be, over and over again, like, oh, this is the problem, oh, this is the problem, oh, this is the problem. And at a point you realize this is like, it's kind of like how there are certain people where I know any discussion I have with them is going to result back into like, we're going to talk about anti-vax. And to me, it's like, it's such a small part of things to be able to talk about. Like, it's such a niche specific topic, but like, that's like what they care about. So they're going to go back to it. So maybe it's like projection of their own dissatisfied marriage onto me. I don't know. Misery loves company. So maybe that's part of it, but I don't know. Yeah, but it's interesting. So I don't know. Like I said, it's this moral quandary, and just been thinking about it because I was thinking about my own relationships yesterday and just how like I'm kind of back to being a workaholic, and it's like that just like makes life livable. I used to talk about like when I would go back to the US, it's like plugging back into the Matrix, and it's like I don't mean that in a very like Andrew Tate kind of way. I really don't. I just mean that in like like the actual Matrix movie. No, like actually though, I think in the U.S. we're like trained to think that like money is important and money means everything and money serves a purpose, but it's not the end all be all. And I think when you don't have money or you need money for something and you can't get that thing without having the money, it kind of becomes the focus of your life. It's that way for me, right? It's like what I'm focusing on because of this housing stuff. And maybe once that becomes resolved, I can go back to worrying about relationships, which is the luxury that I had when I was living in Finland as a student. Now that's not really my situation. So I'm going to have to, make different choices and sacrifices and decisions, and then maybe at some point come back to it. But, before I was into personal finance, which is my current autistic interest, I was very into like relationships and reading about relationships. So like, I textbook understand what's healthy and what's not. Doesn't make it always easy in practice. Like, your behavior is so hardwired into you, and that's actually what the Psychology of Money book talks about, is like, it doesn't matter if you're smart. It's hard to teach people to change their behavior. Just like it's hard for me to change my behavior with being in relationships where I don't feel like I'm being controlled, and it's like still an issue I have, to be very honest. So, I don't know. Maybe what I'm imploring here is for people to consider their own interest in watching this channel. Do you feel disconnected from other people? Are you looking for a way to feel connected with somebody? Does it just feel like a talk show that you enjoy listening to? It's kind of what I hoped it would be for people, but I do worry about the affinity maybe that people develop for me through watching this, and it kind of freaks me out because I also feel really freaked out when people like me a lot immediately because first off, it's never sustainable. Yeah, it tends to flip-flop, right? Like, I should talk about personality disorders at some point because I know way too much stuff about that, but anytime there's like a high degree of like, oh, you're so cool, like it usually at some point, if you stay in that relationship long enough, is going to plummet right into the other direction because it's the whole idealization devaluation process. So that's one thing that freaks me out, having definitely been in those kinds of interactions with people. So, I don't know. It's a little bit ranty and philosophical, maybe, as usual. But, yeah, I'm going to keep working now because I have time for it. But, yeah, so I'm going to leave it at that. That's pretty much it. Alright, I'll try to keep recording. We'll see how things go. Alright, bye. Until next time.